I'm tired.
The Late Morning Program with Nam Ras podcast.
Hare Krishna, everyone. You are listening to the Late Morning Program with Nam Ras podcast, the number one Hare Krishna podcast in the world. I'm here with my friend, my old friend that I've known for a really long time, Chandrasekhar Acharya Prabhu. Chandrasekhar Prabhu, thank you for joining me.
Prabhu, thank you. Thanks to everyone watching. It's my honor to be on your really cool podcast, really.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. So Chandrasekhar Prabhu has a really interesting story. He does a lot of interesting things. He's done a lot of interesting things in the past. So let's get into it and hear his story and talk about all kinds of awesome things. So Chandrasekhar Prabhu, so I understand you grew up in Beverly Hills.
Yeah, I kind of ping-ponged, born in LA and grew up in Paris, a little bit in Mexico City, back to LA, West Hollywood, Beverly Hills. So I kind of went to high school in Santa Monica, living in West Hollywood, Beverly Hills. And I did live in Beverly Hills during my, 9th to 13th year. And so, yeah, back and forth between Paris and LA, really.
Very cool. So to kind of walk us through like your kind of your upbringing as well as how you came in contact with devotees.
Well, grew up in a Catholic, background, but not very practicing at all. Like my dad had grown up with the Jesuits. He was Caucasian French, but he grew up in Egypt because his parents worked for some French company near the Suez Canal in Alexandria. So he grew up raised by the Jesuits. The Jesuits have their game down. They grow their church by education.
Oh, right.
So, but he was never really touched, or he was more of an agnostic. And my mom was more of a Catholic. She immigrated to America from Croatia with her mom when she was 17 or something, from a Catholic background. But both parents were never very never took me to church. I think I got my first, my first communion, I think, because my grandma was insisting. And
right.
I met devotees when I was 9 on Venice Beach.
9.
I was taking a walk there, with my mom. And you know how sometimes there's a Harinam party, and then you'll see like a little kid with the parents, and the mom says, "Come here, Johnny." They're a cult, like. But that wasn't the case. God bless Krishna, bless her soul. She kind of let me get closer to the table, and there were devotees there. They were passing out free books and prasadam. So I got my lemonade prasadam at age 9, and got a small copy of Back to Godhead. No, Coming Back. Mm-hmm. A small little book. So I was 9, and then for 10 years, nothing, no contact. Went to high school. In high school, I was just naturally inclined to Eastern philosophy. So on my own, I started kind of looking into Buddhism. I had a really cool philosophy/history world civilization teacher, Larry Morissette, still alive, and he's retired now. He's a really nice French-Canadian professor with whom I had a nice rapport, and he had us read, different sort of extracurricular passages, and so he kind of, I think, I would say was my sort of opening door to Eastern philosophy. And then I went to Cornell University, and on spring break, I was flying from LA to back to New York, then to Ithaca. And in the airport, some devotee just like walked right up to me as I was boarding, and like showed me some sort of little cartoonish thing that said, "You've just been arrested, or you've been cited, you're getting a citation for it." And there's like 4 or 5 check-in boxes. One of them was looking too good, or smiling too much, or looking too happy. And I was like, "What?" And he's like, he hands me this book, and then he's like, "Can you give I think he asked me for a donation." I was like, "I'm boarding." He's like, "No, please, give some." So I think I gave him a donation or something, but I walked away with this Message of Godhead, this book that Prabhupada wrote before coming to America, a small essay on the 3rd chapter of the Gita. So I took that book with me to Ithaca, and then I took on at the end of the spring semester, I asked my dad, who lived in Paris at the time, if I could go spend 2 weeks in Caru, which is a beautiful resort on the Playa Nayarit coast near Puerto Vallarta in Mexico, on the west coast of Mexico, where my dad, since I was born, had a little casita, a little house in this development. And we used to spend, one Christmas I'd spend with my mom somewhere, and then one with my dad, back and forth, my dad being in Paris, my mom in LA.
Right.
But I'd spend every Christmas every 2 Christmas holidays there, like religiously. A beautiful place right on, just beautiful on the beach and everything. So I asked him if I could just go and take a break there. He's like, yeah. So he made arrangements for me to have access to the key to the little, house there. And it's off season in June, May. There's not many people there. And I was just having my quesadillas or something. I had already become a vegetarian because I had some friends from high school, Crossroads High School in Santa Monica, who had pushed me to become a vegetarian. I had already done so. I guess that's the effect of Prabhupada's books, I would have to say.
Right.
Like this sort of subconscious, I guess, agyata sukriti, as we would call it, right?
Mm.
And the reason I'm telling this story is because there is when I met, that's when I had a really important event, which I describe in my little memoir, by the way.
Mm.
Tari Benvenuti, this Italian lady who is older than me. She kind of was like an older sister slash mother figure. She lived there in Mexico, married to a Mexican gentleman since years. She had a little shop there that sold, silverware from Guatemala. And then she kind of looked like the sort of shaman white kind of witch, quote unquote, kind of person. And she stood out from the rest of the sort of the jet set people who came to Acharyas. And with her, I always had a relationship since I was a child. Like we always spent time together. She was very affectionate, and she had gone to India. She was a follower of Paramahamsa Yogananda and other sort of Advaita Vedanta gurus. And so so I'm just there at the restaurant one day, and she's like, she comes up to me, she's like, "What are you doing here? I don't know. How are you?" And I was like, "Well, what are you doing here?" I'm just finishing my first year of college, and she's like, "Well, listen, I'm here with my 2 sons, and I'm driving from Guatemala all the way to San Diego for this huge fair. And so we're stopping here for a week. And I didn't realize how long the travel is. Can you drive with me, accompany me and my 2 boys to San Diego instead of flying back to LA?"
Yeah.
And so I was like, why not? Why shouldn't I not help her? And it'll be fun. So I said, yeah. So I canceled I didn't fly. And about maybe 5 days before, we took the 7-day trip from central West Coast Mexico in this yellow hippie, those Volkswagen hippie vans.
Yeah.
And so these 2 little boys and this friend, mentor, and on the way, it was just like all about Shiva and Ganesh and this. And, you had this little altar there, the passenger seat with incense and cloves and what's that sort of typical incense you burn? These white sort of gray leaves. You're from New York.
Oh, yeah, like sage or something.
Sage.
Right.
And so she was telling me about Paramahamsa Yogananda and this and that and this Babaji and that Babaji, and you got to go to India. And that's when I did my first kirtan, was with her, actually.
Wow. With
her kids under a tree, somewhere where we stopped and had some some guacamole and tortillas. And so she gave me a list of books I had to read. And so then I decided to do a year abroad. And so that following fall, we're talking September 93, I was at the Sorbonne University in Paris. And of all the things I took with me to spend that year in Paris as a year abroad from Cornell was that small book, Message of Godhead from Prabhupada.
Mm.
And one afternoon, I was just flipping through it, and I saw like ISKCON centers worldwide. And I scrolled down, I saw, wow, Paris has one. So out of the blue, out of curiosity more. So I called, and fortunately someone answered. I'm like, thank you, Krishna. Someone answered. Sometimes you call an ISKCON center and
no one picks up.
They have it down at the Bhakti-Vedanta Manor and other places, but fortunately someone answered, and the person said, yeah, well, this is a temple. I was like, well, what do you guys do here? What is it? And he's like, well, this is a temple, and we have some monks living here, and we have services. And as a matter of fact, there's a famous monk, a famous Swami coming in Paris. He'll be doing a program at the Indian Cultural Center in Paris in such and such a quarter in a week. And that was Bhakti Caru Swami.
Oh, wow.
And so he's like, you should come, you should go. So I was like, okay, I wrote down the address and everything. And then I called.
93?
This is September 1993.
Wow.
Yeah. So I called my friend I Kipman, this Vietnamese adopted son of a Jewish French family. I was like, hey man, there's this, Swami coming to town. He's going to give a talk. Do you want to go? He's like, okay. So we went there and I entered the hall, and there weren't that many people. There was this Swiss, I learned later, Swiss lady devotee who came up to me and started talking to me about the Vedas and how the Vedas are, a treasure house of knowledge that talks about everything. And I was like, wow, the Vedas, and it was time to go into the auditorium, and I sat down, and then Bhakti Swami came on stage, accompanied by a French devotee translator. And when he sat down and spoke, I was just blown away.
Wow.
I was like, wow. He spoke about reincarnation. And, because of my studying a little bit of, between joints and girls, studying Buddhism, I was kind of attracted by the idea. And so when he talked about the Bhagavad-Gita's version of reincarnation, and how, the personalistic view of reincarnation, that there's an actual soul who transmigrates and all that, I was like, wow, this is it, and at the end of the talk, he's like, well, if anyone wants to come on stage now, we're going to do a kirtan. And I really felt like there was like a hand lifting me up from underneath my butt and just like walking down kind of like, I guess the Billy Graham equivalent of, walk down the aisle and accept Jesus, So I literally like walked down the aisle and accepted Krishna.
Wow.
I came up on stage, and then he started leading a kirtan and, passing the microphone to people. And he came up to me, and I didn't even know the Maha Mantra. I was like, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And he just smiled. And then I got this ride back home with this guy who was there, who gave me a ride. And on the way back, I was like, what did I just experience, And to this day, I like the analogy of, I felt like I was like a janitor in, let's say, a CIA building, okay? And my shift is like from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. I come in there like I've been doing for 20 years, and I just clean, the floor, and I have access to the places I'm supposed to clean. And I do my thing and I go home. But one night, like the top security office door happens to be open. And I just kind of wander in there just out of curiosity. And there's all these files, these top secret files on the desk, that there's going to be a disclosure now, supposedly in June, right, about the UFO phenomena. And anyway, so and I felt like I'm just like innocently looking at all these files, and then the head of operation comes and says, what are you doing here? And then from now on, your life can never be the same, because you're part of the whatever, you're part of the conspiracy. You're in the knowledge, you're in the know of these files, and your identity is going to change. Everything's going to change. You can never go back. And I felt like that, like, oh my God, if I'm really honest with myself, that what I just experienced is not just an ordinary going to see a movie or going to a party or going to a museum, or it's just something of a different category,
So your paradigm was basically like all shifted in that one talk.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Wow. And so now you felt like, okay, I need to pursue this.
Yeah. I felt like, I called my dad had this Buddhist friend, an old gentleman who had polio, so he had a limp. Robert Longuevillard was his name, and he called himself a Buddhist. So I called him the next day. Robert, I went to this, there's this Swami, and they have a temple in Noisy-le-Grand outside of Paris, and can you drive me there? They have a program on Sunday. And he's like, okay. So he picked me up, and my dad's like, where are you going? I'm going with Robert to a temple. He's like, what? Little did he know that I would, drop out of college like 3 months later, and
wow,
joined the cult, right? Or joined the brahmachari ashram. So I went there, and then my first you grew up in a devotee Vaishnava family,
right?
So you know what it's like to have darshan of a life-size or a large-sized deity, since you have that samskar since birth.
Yeah,
but I didn't. And so I remember that we went in there, we came a little early, and there was a brahmachari there. He's like, well, come, this is the temple. And he opened the temple room, and he showed us a statue of Prabhupada. And he said, that's Krishna. And I was just like, whoa, that's a beautiful deity of Radha Parasheshwara, 3-dimensional with clothes. And I was just like kind of mesmerized. And
you're very open-minded, it seems, and that because sometimes people, it stops there. Like, okay, like this is too much now. It seems like when someone's like kind of really looking and open-minded, then anything that can be shown, like that's part of the, the whole Krishna conscious experience, it's like, that's okay. And I just gotta be explained what this is. There's no like kind of like wall up.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I've been in past life. No, I'm kidding. I don't know.
So then you went to the temple, and then what happened?
Bhakti Swami gave a talk
Oh,
at the
there
end of
as
the
well.
class. He's just talking about India, and he's like, and so I felt like, wow, I got to go to India. I got to go to India. Then, so like, any
Yeah.
questions? And I asked what I think is the most ridiculous question I could have ever asked. As I raised my hand and I go, "Can anyone go to India?" Like cringe, right? And he's like, "Yeah." But then I guess he saw that I was kind of serious with it. He said, "So when do you want to go?" And I said, "Now." And everyone kind of laughed, and he didn't. He kind of chuckled, but he said, "Well, we'll speak later. We'll speak after." So then I was told by his secretary to come back the next morning. So I came back to Bhagavatam class the next morning by subway, and then and then he met me. So where do you go to? What do you do? I'm half French, half American. I go to Cornell. Oh, that's a good school. Stay in school, he told me. But then he's like, well, if you want to meet me in Bombay in 10 days, here's my secretary. You can meet me in Bombay. And I was like, like dropping everything and, go travel with some Swami in Bombay 10 days later. It was like, it wouldn't have been possible because I don't think I had the money. I didn't visas and all that.
Right.
So he left. And then fortunately, next to where I lived, which is a little studio apartment on the top floor of my dad's apartment, next to the Panthéon, next to the Luxembourg Garden in the 5th quarter, where Hemingway used to write his books and stuff. And beautiful, the Latin Quarter.
Yeah.
The devotees had a little outreach center about a 10-minute walk next to the Seine River called the Centre Culturel Hare Krishna. And they had like 3, programs a week. So I would go there 3 times a week and, just same old Kirtan, Bhagavad-Gita, Prasadam, Kirtan, Bhagavad-Gita, Prasadam.
Yeah.
But I remember I came to the temple, and then before I got even the Bhagavad-Gita, by that time, I still don't know anything about the Bhagavad-Gita. I don't even have a copy. I just have that Message of Godhead book. And some brahmachari at that temple gave me a big old red book, which was published by the Northern BBT at that time, the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, right? The publication of the Hare Krishna movement, called The Nectar of Book Distribution.
Oh, I
Did you
know
ever
that
see
book.
a copy of it, Namras?
Yeah, I've seen that book. I love that. That's such a great book. It's got a lot of pictures in it. I remember as a kid reading it.
A lot of quotes from Prabhupada, a lot of testimonies from different devotees.
Yes, yes.
Books. So he gave me that. And so my first impression, they say first impressions are lasting. My first impression of the Gaudiya Vaishnava theology was very much through the lens of famous verses from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, from the Bhagavatam, and from Prabhupada's commentaries about the importance of outreach, about the importance of Mahaprabhu's mercy of spreading Krishna consciousness,
Right, right.
And I remember I had this collection of like 70 or 100 CDs. This pre-MP3 days, right?
Right.
So like, everyone, Led Zeppelin, Lenny Kravitz, The Doors, Bob Marley, Eurythmics, etc. And and I had heard classes by then. It's Maya. Anything that doesn't talk about Krishna or God is Maya. So I had this bright idea. It was actually a good idea. I wish because I lost all those CDs, and I wish I had still had them. Anyway, so what I did is I took all these Bhagavad Gitas in one backpack, and then I took all my CD collection in another, and I left just one CD left in my little studio, which was a CD of Prabhupada singing the Dasavatar Stotram and this song Amara Jivana, by that Bengali song by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And so I took all my CDs. I went to the intersection of Boulevard Saint-Germain and Boulevard Saint-Michel. There's a lot of people, and I plopped both books down, and I said, "Free CDs." So all of a sudden, I got a crowd around me all of a sudden. And I'm like, "Yeah, you can take 3 CDs for free, any one of your choice, but you have to buy this book too."
Wow.
30 francs or something. And they were like, "Yeah, okay, I'll take a Stevie Wonder and whatever, Madonna and Funkadelic album and but I don't want the book." No, you got to buy it. So I was like, okay. So, and I swear to God, like within 10 minutes, all my CDs were gone and all the Gitas were gone.
Hold on a second. This is fascinating. So you had, because you had read that Art of Book Distribution book, you felt like this is the right thing to do, was to do the outreach of selling the books.
I would have given them now today, but yeah, back then, yeah.
Wow. And you were like basically very new. You weren't like completely like, I mean, you had read that little book, but you hadn't, kind of really fully, convinced yourself or anything.
Oh yeah.
That's amazing. Wow. And then, I mean, then you became like a big book distributor like later on. Anyway, let's continue with the story. I love it.
Well, sort of a turning point at that point, it was like, I feel like for those who are watching, historically, a little parentheses, a little sociological observation.
Sure. Oh yeah, that's interesting.
You know how Prabhupada disciples, they often talk about, when did you join? What year did you join? That term, join.
Join, yes.
There's this movie, Hannah and Her Sisters by Woody Allen. And there's that famous scene in there where he's like going through a sort of a religious crisis, trying to find a religion. He's shopping for religions. He's walking by some Hare Krishnas, right, who are dancing.
Yes, I've seen that. Yeah.
Remember that scene?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
It's so telling. And then the devotee gives him a Gita and says, well, think about it. And, and he asks him this funny question. He's like, well, you guys believe in reincarnation, right? And the devotee's like, yeah. So he's like, well, does that mean that if I'm a bad person, I'll come back as an aardvark or something in my next life? And then the devotee's like, well, just read it and think about it. And then as he walks off, he's like, who are you kidding? You're going to become a Krishna. You're going to shave your head, put on robes, and dance in airports. You got it. I'm so depressed. End of scene.
Right.
And so why am I mentioning this story? What did you just say?
Because you were talking about how Prabhupada disciples, they ask you, when did you
join, right? So that's the whole idea. Yeah, because Woody Allen tells, look, the first thing he asks the devotee is like, listen, I don't want to join, okay? I just have a philosophical question. I don't want to join or anything. Right. It's like, I'm interested in Krishna, but I'm not, ashram material,
Right.
And so I think there was like this wave of, from the late 60s to, I would say, and Birch Rochford who wrote books on the Hare Krishnas.
Yes.
Our well-wishing academic. And he also, he makes a good analysis that basically from the, early mid 60s to mid 80s, you wanted to become a devotee of Krishna, you had to drop everything.
Right.
And you have to join a temple, join a rural community, give up your job. And in a way, we could argue that that's not really we could definitely make an argument that there's other ways to become a devotee, like stanistitaha, for example, in that Bhagavatam verse, just stay where you are, just add Krishna into your life, which is very much, I think, the ethos of today's ISKCON,
Yes.
But I think I caught the, when you catch a wave and you're surfing, like you can catch it at the beginning or you can catch the wave like towards the end, Yeah. So I think I caught the end part of that wave of the ethos of like, oh, you're interested in becoming a devotee of Krishna? Join the temple.
Right.
So about a month in or 2 months in, I'm at the Sunday Feast program, and the temple president comes up to me and he's like, well, what are you going to do now, Cyril? Like, hello, like it's time to join, And then there's this Bhakti program starting in New Mayapur on January 1st, and I was like, well, I'm studying. He's like, yeah, but studies, that's, it's Maya, it's materialistic.
Oh, gosh.
You can always do that later, and what's important now is to get, a good foundation for your spiritual life.
Yeah.
I guess he had a good point. I mean, in retrospect, I always wonder, like, if I had stayed at Cornell and up there in, in upstate New York, where there's no devotee association, there was no streaming, kirtans, would I have been covered over again and maybe wasted another 10 lifetimes or whatever before I came back to Krishna? I don't know. I'll never know.
Yeah.
But I had a decision to make, and I was like, you know what? And to tell you honestly, I was doing this year, I was at the history of art department, and I just wasn't into my class. All I wanted to do was just chant Hare Krishna, and then, like that new convert rush. I mean, we insiders would say, Lord Nityananda gives you sort of a little sneak preview of the, the bliss of Krishna consciousness, right?
Right.
You hear that? So maybe I was experiencing some of that, or maybe suffice it to say that I was like, okay, I'll do it.
Wow.
And so without telling my parents, I don't even think on December 31st, I showed up at the temple with my suitcase and I drove down with the temple president and another bhakta to New Mayapur, and we arrived in the late afternoon, evening, And there was this rip-roaring kirtan in this, this old, I'm sure you've seen castles of New Mayapur. It's a rural, old sort of small castle with parquet floors and, spider webs kind of everywhere. No, not really, but kind of back in the day. And the temple room was just like, you walked into a sauna or, a Turkish, what is it? Those steam baths, with all these devotees just jumping and screaming and in ecstasy, and singing and dancing and kirtan and swirling in circles. And that, that began the next phase of the Bhakti program in New Mayapur.
Wow. And then you kind of, how did you end up, I know you were in LA for many years as well. So how long were you in New Mayapur for at the Bhakti program?
About 2 months. One afternoon, I just saw a Mayapur journal. Back in the 90s, there was like a monthly little journal that was printed in India, I guess, about Mayapur. And I was like, wow, Mayapur. And I just really felt drawn to Mayapur. And the GBC meetings were coming close. And the GBC for France at the time was my mentor, Paramgati Swami. They call him Paramgati Prabhu, this Brazilian wonderful sannyasi. And I almost took initiation from him anyway. But it doesn't matter, I believe, who you take initiation from, really. But that's another theological concept or discussion. But anyway, at the time, so, I asked him, well, can I go to India with you when you go? And he's like, yeah, I think that's a good idea. You should come with me. So I don't remember how I got the money. And I think my dad, Krishna bless him, paid for my trip. And so next thing I know, I'm getting a ride. I'm going to the airport and taking a flight to Calcutta. And then from Calcutta to Mayapur, after 2 months of the Bhakti program in New Mayapur. And then I got,
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, if you don't believe in ghosts, you should.
Why is that?
Because I strongly believe that I got possessed by a ghost in Mayapur.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Tell me about that.
You know about that. That's one of the things you liked about the book description.
Oh, right. Yes. But in more detail, tell us about it. I that's interesting.
I mean, I have never had epilepsy before or after.
Yeah.
Not your most stable and sober and peaceful and calm and equipoised human being, but I've never had episodes like this ever before or after. Yeah. They say that when you fly or you travel over seas, long distances, ghosts don't bother you anymore. They don't follow you across large bodies of water. The reason I say is because we went on the parikrama, and I was just like, wow, Mayapur, all these devotees and these huge deities of Radha Madhava, and just like, wow, Mayapur. And we went on this party, and my mom came. Your
mom came?
Yeah, my mom came to Mayapur. And so talk about, first impressions, man. So she came the day before the parikrama starts, and so I'm walking with her across the campus with her. I'm in, my white kurta and my white dhoti and, like my shika. And she's trying to, appreciate what I'm doing. And so like the next day I'm going to parikrama. So she would stay back at the temple, at the guest house. And so I think the first or second day of the parikrama, I got possessed by a ghost. This entity literally like possessed me, and when we got close to the kirtan, it would like literally strangle me. I would foam at the mouth. I mean, it was just crazy. I would just like, I couldn't even breathe. I would fall. And so like I fell back on the, and then Madhavendra Puri, who was this nice devotee from France who had assisted me at the beginning, came back. He's like, what's going on? So they called the ambulance, and I was taken back to Mayapur. And they bring me to this room, and my mom's like, what have you done to my son? Because I'm like, I mean, to give you a description of what it was like, because then, my mom was like, she immediately called a taxi and we went to a hospital in Calcutta.
Yeah.
And I remember this taxi ride, I was like on my mom's lap, with a white towel under me, because I was like literally like foaming and like saliva was oozing out. And I remember she was chanting the whole way, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.
Oh my goodness.
And then I felt like, wow, this is cool. Like, it's kind of cool. Like she's chanting, great, I swear this was like beyond, it's not like I was making this up to get some, I swear it was just like, and to give you an example of what it was like, 15 years later, I'm in Mauritius, okay, Mauritius Island.
Yeah.
I'm having lunch with Arjuna Prabhu, one of the early Prabhupada disciples from Mauritius, a Caucasian from France, originally, sort of aristocrat family, one of the first disciples of Prabhupada in Mauritius. I'm having lunch with him and his family, and he's into like doing ghost busting and exorcisms, and that's kind of his hobby. So as we're talking, he's like, yeah, I remember about like 15 years ago, I was in Mayapur, and they told me, Arjuna Prabhu, you got to go to Calcutta in the hospital. No. And I was like, so I didn't say anything. I was like, really? Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more,
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah. So I mean, I've never seen this in my life. So I went to this Calcutta hospital, and I walked inside the room, and there was this young bhakta, this skinny young man on the bed, and he was just like literally like just jumping like horizontally up and down the bed. His neck was bent backward, his eyes were rolled up, and the doctor with his white doctor uniform and his pen and his notebook was in the corner of the room, like frozen with his mouth down, in shock. And I was like, wow, really, huh? And he's like, yeah. And then I started chanting these Nishinga mantras to him. And then when I did that, like this deep, horrible voice came out of this kid's mouth and started laughing at me. And I was like, well, you know what, Arjuna Prabhu? That was me. And he was like, no, are you serious? I was like, yeah, that was me. He's like, I can't believe I've never seen this before.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I almost died. I remember at one point he choked me so bad, that entity or whatever, that I literally, like, I started fainting. And then I don't know, somehow I just thought of the deities in Mayapur, Radha Madhava, and I was like, okay, I'm dying now. And just as I was like about to die, I was able to breathe again. So then my mom was like, send me back to France. She flew back to LA. Maybe she went to France also, but then her home is in LA. So she flew back to LA, and I was kind of in the care of my dad there. But every time I went to the temple, these fits would happen. And they didn't want me anywhere. So they sent me to I went to New Mayapur. And then by the time I got to New Mayapur, they were like, sorry, you can't stay here because, we heard what happened to you. So then my dad was like back in Paris, like, you know what? Like, I've had enough. I'm sending you to your mom. Let her deal with you. So he bought me a one-way ticket. And then I landed back in LA, ready for, more of these ghost possessions.
How old were you at that time?
20.
Wow.
20 years old.
So then you went to LA.
Yeah, I went to LA. So I'm back home, at our house in West Hollywood. And so my mom's like, well, why don't you, get a job? My ex-husband can arrange for you to get a job. So my ex-stepdad was like this big guy who had this huge company in like heavy equipment, like tractors and stuff. So next thing I know, I'm in some junkyard in like Pomona or something, with other gentlemen who are, kind of real worker type, and, with their hard hats and eating their tacos and cussing to each other and laughing with their beers. And I'm supposed to, I'm carrying kerosene tanks from one side to the other. And I came home. I was like, Mom, I'm sorry. I can't do this. I can't do this. So she was like, well, you know what? Then I'm dropping you at the temple. And so then she, pack your bags. So my mom drives me to Watsika Avenue, LA, and, plops down my suitcases. And here I am, with my 2 suitcases in front of the temple. But funny enough, none of these episodes ever happened again. And I heard later on that, according to whatever experts in the field of ghosts will follow you across land. So, from India all the way to France is Pakistan, whatever, all that land mass.
Yeah.
But when you go from Paris to LA, you're flying over a lot of water. And I don't know, whatever it is, it's just, it never had, that thing left me forever. It's been 28 years and, not.
And you've been back to Mayapur many, many times since
then.
Yeah,
and I heard that, a lot of people there talk about like these powerful Brahmins, Brahma Rakshasas. You've heard of that term, right?
Of course, yeah.
What's a Brahma Rakshasa?
It's a Brahmana who was, I guess he was sinful or something, and he died in a weird way and became a ghost, and they have chicken feet somehow. Like that's what they look like. Anyway, that's what people say. Huh. Anyway, this is a interesting conversation about that. But okay, so you went back to Mayapur and then nothing ever happened. But I'd be freaked out to go back to and like kind of experience that again. If I
Yeah,
was
right.
you.
No, just it was a one-time thing and whatever.
So then you were in LA, and did the devotees like welcome you? Like, okay, who's this guy just showing up?
Yeah. He was, yeah. And then kitchen and cutting vegetables and then when the devotees from Traveling Sankirtan passed through selling books on Traveling Sankirtan, as we call it, right?
Yeah.
At the Beastie Boys show, they were following the Beastie Boys. Like yeah, the Bhakti will go out with them, and somehow I just distributed a lot of books.
Wow.
And then Suvas, the temple president, was like, ding, 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 ding. So he's like, you're off kitchen duty and you're a book distributor now. I'm like, okay.
Wow.
So I was shipped, I was sent, kind of like, like brahmacharis are kind of like dealt with like basketball players, they're like
traded trades and stuff.
so I was traded for a 3-month contract with Yagya Purusha and his Traveling Sankirtan program on the college campuses on the East Coast. So now I'm in the Traveling Sankirtan van with 2 other devotees, wearing kopans and drinking hot milk at night and approaching students, pretending to be a student and, without the security, officers looking at us, selling them Prabhupada's books and getting caught and then having to go to another college campus. And God, I remember once we got caught, I got caught. And I had a warning from that university, like you can never come back. So we went to the next university, and then as I'm passing, talking to some guy or some girl on campus, another security comes and and stops me and says, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "Show me your ID." So as I pull out my ID, like the warning sign from the other university like flies out, almost like right into his hands, and he's like, "What you've been?" So I have a lot of stories of getting nipped at concerts and at college campuses. Those are fun.
Well, what do you think about those? Like, how long did you distribute books full time for?
Till I kind of started getting, because that was just a little introduction. And during the summers, we'd do, concert tours. But the rest of the year was a slugfest at LAX, man. And that was tough.
I distributed books at, with Yagi Purush Prabhu's ashram in New York and when I was in the ashram for a few years. And it's kind of scarred me, to be honest. Like, I can imagine what you did, because
how did it scar you?
It was just like it was kind of like peer pressure to go out and do it, and if I got a little success, then it was like, okay, maybe I could do this. But it was like in New York is like a very difficult place to distribute books,
and
like
especially asking a donation for the books.
Yes,
even more hard.
Yeah, so it was like day in and day out doing like the marathon, like the Christmas marathon and a summer marathon, and it was just it wasn't me. Like, I didn't feel like it was me, although I got a lot of reciprocation, I feel, from Krishna and from Prabhupada and all the devotees. Like, I remember Caru Chandra, who you know very well, who you distributed books with, he like came and gave us like the first day of the marathon, he gave Bhagavatam class, and he gave like this really enthusiastic, like, go, let's do this, and
he has a record, by the way, for
he has a record.
I mean, I think we should start having different categories, because free book distribution is, personally, I think it's the future in large scale, especially since they're free already online, and books go public domain in 30 years. But in terms of like category of like distributing books by getting a donation for every one of those books, Caru Chandra, Yogi Caru, has the North American record ever for the most books distributed in one day, which I think is like 1,300 or something.
What? Oh my goodness. Yeah, anyway, he gave us like really like amazing pep talk, and then we were all like ready to go out. But I think I don't know, that's how I went scarred is like a very strong word. But anyways, it was
distasteful.
It was distasteful, yeah. But how did you deal with like day in and day out doing it for years and years and years? Like, tell us a little bit about how you got through that.
I got through it by a good sadhana. I mean, when we chanted our rounds, man, because we knew. See, one thing is to approach someone, hey, would you like a copy of this book? It's about my religion. Right. No thanks. All right. That's already kind of demeaning enough, but you don't lose anything. But when you're asking like, hey, can you give a donation? Yeah. It brings it to a whole other level of setting yourself up for a lot of humiliation and a lot of rejection, and it's just really hard,
Yeah.
so that was the ethos in those days. You asked for donations for the books and stuff, and fortunately we did give out free books to people who couldn't give a donation. So to leave someone, like, I'll always remember, I feel so guilty about this. We were on this Lollapalooza or Warped Tour or BC Boy show, and on these huge parking lots, right? And you approach each car as they're parking, they're coming in. Everyone knows Ram Roy, right?
Yeah.
So you've got a line of, I actually showed you a picture of like Kastuba, me, Yagya, Gornitai, Donna Kelly from Dallas, and we're all like literally waiting for the next car to come. So the next car pulls up, and you go up to the window. Hey guys, welcome to the show. We're the monks traveling with the show, and here are the books we're showing to everybody. And then the next car pulls out, next devotee goes to that window, and so I remember Ram Roy, his line is like, "Here, take one of these. We're tearing down this Walmart civilization."
Wow.
Take one of these. We're tearing down this Walmart civilization. That was his line. Every car, every person.
Wow.
Right. But I remember, so we'd get really far away, and then, you run out of books. You're carrying them in these like paper bag, like supermarket bags, 20 or 30. But then you run out of them. So you got to get back to your van, which is maybe parked like, a mile down, right? So I remember I got a ride with one car that was being directed back towards, where our van was parked. And so there were like these rowdy guys. Hey, what do you sell? And they were giving me a ride, and saving me like a half hour. And so I remember they had these 2 hardbound books, and the BBT cost was $2.50, and we were supposed to get double BBT price. And he was like, "I'll give you $5 for both of them." And I should have said, "Of course." He said, "Yeah." I was like, "No." And to this day, so the driver gave me a free ride, did service for the Sankirtan mission. And I was such a nitwick that I left, the guy who showed interest, nothing in terms of knowledge about Krishna, because he wasn't giving double BBT. So back to LAX, sadhana, like we chanted really good rounds. And then there was this one verse that I just kept chanting, and it was just actually the theme of my memoir. And so it's a verse that Prabhupada says one should be the motto of every devotee. He mentions that in the Nectar of Devotion. That verse, Tatenu kampam susamikshamano, which translates that, "My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions to his past misdeeds and offering you respectful obeisances with his hard body and words, inherits the kingdom of God because it has become his rightful claim." So I'd recite that verse all day long, as well as the Upadrashtang Mantacha verse from the 13th chapter, where you're meditating on the Paramatma, on the super soul inside the body of the person you're talking to, and he's the sanctioner. And so you're begging him, please let this soul take a book, like allow this soul, nudge this soul to take a book from me.
Wow.
So from person to person, we just take shelter of, but it was like a real chutney. It was like a real chutney, Prabhu. It was like you said, you felt reciprocation, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So like, I remember one December marathon, we had been at the airport from like 9 a.m. It was like 10 p.m. on like December 23rd or something. And my knees were killing me. But I remember I was just going from one person to the other, like a bee or like a fly. And I really felt like completely detached from whether or not the person's going to take a book. Wow. I could care less. But at the same time, I had this enthusiasm and care and affection for the person. So it was this wonderful combination of affection or compassion and total detachment about what they do with their life, Yeah. And I remember I stopped at one point. I was like, wow, now I'm going to go back to the ashram and go to sleep, fall in a mode of ignorance. Tomorrow morning is just going to be a whole other ordeal to get out of bed. If I could if I could stay in this consciousness right now, as I have it right now, and continue doing this service like for eternity in this consciousness, because if you're attached and you're trying to get money from people,
if you have a fruitive mentality, you're gonna suffer.
And I was like, I wish I could do this forever, But it was also really tough. But there was also, highlights were like I gave a book to Johnny Depp, to Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt had just filmed 11 Years in Tibet. So he was walking by with his girlfriend to drop her off at the gate. So I was like, "Here, would you like one?" He's like, no, thanks. Now, like a half hour, he walks back, having dropped her off. And I was like, "Come on, take one." And he's like, "In my next life." And Johnny Depp, he was like in a real rush, and I put the book in his hand, and I was like, "Wait!" He's like, he turns around. I was like, "Well, we asked for a donation for it," and then he looked at me like, "You cheated me," and I was like, "I'm a monk." So monks asking for donations, that's legit. I mean, that's even justified in the Bhagavatam, like a brahmachari asks alms. So I was like, "I'm a monk," and he's like, "Oh, you're a monk? Oh, okay, sure." So he pulled out his wallet, gave me a 20. He's like, "Thanks," and he walked off. Wow. One of my favorite stories was with Snoop Doggy Dogg. Should I tell you how Snoop Doggy Dogg got a book?
Yes, please.
Actually, before Snoop Doggy Dogg, Will Smith. I have to take credit here because I'm a conditioned soul. I was the first person to introduce Will Smith to a Bhagavad-Gita.
Really?
This was like 1998. And he's walking by, and I show him the Gita. Maybe he held it in his hand, and he was like, at that time, he was like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, right? And he's like, kind of like the valley, kind of like, "You got to be kidding me." So he's like, "No," and he walked off.
Now look at him. You're his,
Swami, totally, and Jahnavi, and his daughter, and
right. Tell us a little bit about, like, now, I remember you were saying just earlier. Now you were saying you feel like they should give it out for free, instead of charging for them.
Well, yeah. You want to hear about Snoop?
Oh yeah, Snoop Dogg. Yeah. Before that,
you guys are New Yorkers. I mean, you're broadcasting everywhere, but
yeah.
Anyway, Snoop Dogg, like I'm looking at the TV screen at a bar while I'm just waiting for people to walk by, and there's actually a video of Snoop Doggy Dogg, and I didn't know Snoop Doggy Dogg at that time. I was kind of, I guess, not watching too many music videos. Right. And then next thing I know is Snoop Doggy Dogg physically like walks out of gate number 2 with his group of friends, all really slick dressed, African American guys, and all really tall. And I was like, I look at the screen, I was like, whoa. So I walked right in the middle of them. And I did that with Chuck Norris once, actually, too. I sold him a Gita, and then one of his bodyguards afterwards was like, "How did you get by? How'd you get through us?" So, and Charu Chandra, he sold a Gita to Mike Tyson.
Wow.
Anyway, so I was like, "Excuse me," and he's really tall, Snoop. So I was like, "Excuse me, are you a musician? No, are you a famous musician?" He's like, "Yeah." And all his friends are like, "What the hell?" And I was like, so I did the same line. Well, here, this is an ancient book from ancient wisdom, from ancient India, and that shows you how the body, the soul goes from one body to the other. And this is a guy doing yoga, and that shows how, the soul is in everybody's, and it's present in all forms of life. And that's a guy doing, yoga in the Himalayas. Don't try that at home. And that's Sanskrit. That's ancient Sanskrit. And he's like, "That's dope. How much you want for it?"
Wow.
That was his line. "That's dope. How much you want for it?" And by that time, his friends are like, "Come on, man, let's go." And I was like, "Well, I'm a monk, and we just asked for a donation." And he's like, "Hey, Matt," or whatever his name was, like, "give him a donation." So his friend like pulls out and gives me like $1 for a hardbound Gita. And so he gives me the $1, and I was like, and then Snoopy's like, he's starting to get pushed by them. And he's like, is that enough? I was like, "Well, generally, it's a hardbound book. We usually," and then his friend cuts us off. And he goes, "Hey, Snoop, he said donation. Donation means anything you want. So come on, let's go." So they push him away. And as he's walking away, he's like, "Donation? I don't know with his Bhagavad Gita in his hand. He's like, "Donation? I don't know what a donation is. I never went to school." But what's funny, Russ? We can't prove it, but Prabhupada does say how these books have an effect, even if one comes and it touches them, right?
Yes.
Reads one line. A few years later, the dude became a Snoop Lion. Remember, he went through his Rasta phase, and he was claiming that he was the incarnation of Bob Marley, right?
Right.
Probably smoked one too many joints and couldn't remember that he was born before Bob Marley died. But aside from this technical issue,
technical point,
he talked about reincarnation and stuff.
Wow. So
free books. A few years ago, I was here at University of Florida, Gainesville campus, and there was this nice Mormon guy who was kind of like me, French and American. And he was doing his 2-year mission, and he was passing out these hardbound Books of Mormon, right?
Yeah.
And I said to him, I said, listen, what if, the church, the mother church in Utah sends you to some place where there's just a lot of really nice people, really favorable people. And what if just like every day you're just like passing out tons of Books of Mormon? Is there a point where, Salt Lake City tells you, hey, sorry, but we can't send you any more books?
Yeah.
And he's like, with a big, kind of healthy, proud smile, he said, nope, I can distribute as many as I want.
Wow.
So, there's this, on the one side, there's this idea, which is justified, that, when people give a donation, they get benefit, they'll appreciate
value it.
God, they value it.
Right.
But funny, the same devotees who often say that are the first to tell stories about how they met somebody who was drunk at some party and picked up a Science of Self-Realization from the bookshelf, or was walking in the street sometime and, found a Bhagavad-Gita on the floor, or went to their grandmother's home, right?
Yes, that's true.
And so you have to, we kind of have to weigh on the one side, okay, the benefit they get, but it's also not and on the other side, the kind of PR that devotees can get, and the kind of appreciation, genuine appreciation that they get credit for philosophically, for having a really wonderful interaction with a devotee who from beginning to end doesn't want anything from them, and who is so charitable that he gives them, a book about God that they expressed interest in the first place. How would they not appreciate it? I remember at LAX, Prabhu, every day, Juan, the janitor, would come to us at 4:20 because he knew we were leaving at 4:25.
Yeah.
With a stack of 3 to 10 or 15 Bhagavad-Gitas or Science of Self-Realizations, which we had sold. And mind you, we had been trained to sell them in a respectful way, not like some devotees did in the 80s and late 70s of being really aggressive,
Right.
And still having, every day that janitor would come back and sell us back for 50 cents a piece. I think it was $1 for a Gita and 50 cents for a smaller book.
Because they put in the garbage.
Exactly. Books that people had put in the garbage.
Never hear that. I never hear that.
So the idea that, if you give a donation, they'll definitely appreciate, that's nonsense. On the other hand, also the idea that if they don't give a donation, they'll never appreciate it is absolutely false. And we've seen it.
Right.
And on top of that, you add, what I just mentioned briefly before, like Prabhupada's books are already free. They're online. They're free. They're already available for free. His books go, his whole, the copyrights to his books go public domain in I think it's 70 years after the demise of the author. Like anyone can print Shakespeare if they want to.
Right.
Anyone will be able to print Prabhupada's books. And so, my view, it's my humble opinion, for brahmacharis, it's fine. But for householders, give the books out. Let's develop these huge sponsorship programs where kind of like Vaisheshika is already doing, right? With the Gita Motel, but not just leaving them in hotel rooms, but actually giving them out to people. Like when I was with Krishna Kripa at Florida State recently, and we had these sponsored books, and we'd give out these books to people, and we left such a nice impression on them,
Yeah. What's your? I noticed you said PR earlier. Just now you said it. What is your impression, or what is your kind of idea that I don't feel devotees say I don't feel I can give at Prabhupada's book like Bhagavad-Gita as it is, like as the first book, because there might be something questionable he might have said or written or something. And you being a book distributor, person who's very much into outreach and connecting people with Krishna, but also being very sensitive about PR and how things are viewed and things. What is your outlook on that?
It's mixed. On the one hand, I feel like, Prabhupada's language is difficult to understand. Like when I got my first book, Message of Godhead, I didn't understand anything.
Yeah.
And I was 20 years old, right? On the other hand, I think something has to be said about the unique power, potency, effect of Prabhupada's books. So perhaps give him two books for free. Give him, a classic, the 1972 Bhagavad-Gita.
Right. Macmillan 72.
Macmillan 72. And give him like, I don't know, read Anand Maharaj's, Bhagavad-Gita study guide, or a book by
Or like he
Urmila,
wrote a novel recently, right?
or a
Something
novel,
about,
or,
right.
it doesn't have to be one or the other.
Yeah, I see.
But I don't know. I don't think I could like stop giving out Prabhupada's books to people because, he may have said, or he did say something that, women are like their children, or, whatever,
Right.
the difficult comments. There's
Sure.
not that many in the Gita, actually. I mean, it's very like Krishna's God, surrender to Krishna. If people don't like that, what can you do? Like, yeah, I think we can lean to the other extreme and like, oh no, we should like, I mean, not that devotees would do that, but the tendency to perhaps like overhide Prabhupada in fear that, perhaps, they.
Yes.
So I don't know if you feel more comfortable. The point is to give knowledge of Krishna to people.
Right.
So whether it's through a podcast like you're doing, or through a book of your favorite devotee, or through a YouTube channel, or whatever,
Yeah, that's a struggle sometimes devotees go for. It's like making that balance between staying true to our line and to Prabhupada's instructions, but also making it palatable for new people.
Yeah.
There's a balance that needs to be had there.
Yeah. I think
and then it goes,
please.
Then it goes into the discussion of, how like, I know you're a member of Krishna West. So how to, that I think is that how to make it even more palatable to some people who cannot be on board with the cultural part of Krishna consciousness, right? Is that the
yeah, or let's say now we're getting into, because is the cultural aspect of Krishna consciousness necessarily Indian clothes and Indian recipes? And
right.
So when we say the cultural aspect of Krishna consciousness, what do we mean by that?
Right. Yeah. From your perspective, tell us what if you said that, what would you mean by that? The culture.
I think it's the culture of Krishna consciousness is cultural productions, whether they be clothes or music or art, in the mode of goodness, preferably, I guess. Although I guess everything can be engaged in Krishna service. Engage in Krishna service.
Right.
I remember Raghunath, we had a discussion. He's like, for me, devotional clothes is whatever clothes you use to serve Krishna with. That's devotional clothes. I love that definition.
I like that too. Right.
Yeah. So I think, culture engaged in this, or, put the one. I love the analogy of like the ones. Like you go to India and you see so many, very, very, very sattvic, very commendable, very noble Brahmins, for example, who have maybe never eaten meat in their life and have never had, extramarital relationships, and they don't watch pornography, or you name it. They've never smoked a cigarette,
Yeah.
And they have no devotion to Vishnu or Krishna whatsoever. They're maybe like hardcore Advaita Vedantists, Mayavadis to the core. So many zeros, but without the one of Krishna, right? So you put the one, Prabhupada says, right, the one of Krishna in front of the zero becomes 10, 100, 1,000. So it's like I had a discussion with Kostuba once about this, and he liked this analogy. So I'll tell you briefly. I use the analogy of a touchdown in football, in professional football. So you can have like a game-winning, like last second, right, as the clock is winding out in the fourth or in the second half, and you're down by whatever 5, and then the wide receiver with one hand, while smiling to the camera, catches the ball and lands with his 2 feet like a centimeter before the the line, and they win and everything. That's a touchdown.
Yeah.
But then, you have other touchdowns where there's like this ugly fumble and whatever, a tight end just like catches the ball and he falls and the ball keeps fumbling. And finally some guy just kind of lands on it and flops into the end zone. The result's the same. It's 6 points.
Right.
The goal is to become Krishna conscious. The goal is not, what's the external cultural elements you're using to get the end. The goal is,
Right.
So
I like that analogy. Wow.
yeah, me too.
So you're saying that it's not about the means, and I guess means is not the word, but the form.
I think the form, yeah. I mean, to quote Bhaktisiddhanta, right? He was talking about language, mind you, and he said language is like a dress. So what to speak of dress, or what to speak of, the kind of recipes you use to offer with bhakti to Krishna.
Yeah. And I like you quote that verse Tanestita a lot.
Oh man, I believe that's the foundation of Krishna.
Tell us a little bit more. Why do you quote that, and what's the meaning of that?
Okay, so there's this verse. I remember Sachinandan Swami. He gave a class on that at the Serbian Kirtan Festival 3 or 4 summers ago, and I was like, oh my God, yeah! I was so happy. Okay, the verse goes like this: Gyane praya, forget the Sanskrit. Gyane prayasam utapasyanamanta eva jivanti san mukaritam bhavadiya varta. And then the third line is the key one: Stanestitaha shutikatam tanuvan amonobir. And then I forget the fourth line. And it's Lord Brahma in the 10th canto saying that, look, while remaining in your established social situation. So now we're going away from the when did you join? Like joining, like Krishna consciousness means you got to join. You got to, change your ashrams, change your varna, change your career,
clothes, your haircut,
change your clothes. Now it's like stanistitaha, while remaining in your established social situation. And that can be unpacked. I mean, that implies the way you dress and the way people dress around you. That implies it's not that, we live in a monolithic, we do live in a multicultural world. And that's kind of like the point that I think Venkata Prabhu was trying to get at when he was talking about, what does it mean to be an American? What does it mean to be a Westerner? But I think we can go too much to the other extreme and relativize so much that there's really nothing to stand on, I mean, Westerner just means someone who lives in the West, like geographically. I mean, just that itself, that's not going to change because the West is always going to be the West, just in terms of directions, So I think one extreme is to relativize everything where you can't even define a word like Western. And another extreme is to think like, it's only whatever, like white, Protestant, button down, whatever, a specific conception. So I think we got to kind of have the middle path in between. So stanestitaha, while remaining one social situation, one who simply gives submissive oral reception to the messages of your lordship, he or she can conquer you, who is otherwise unconquerable.
Wow. So the idea is how Prabhupada so many times said, just, if you're an architect, remain an architect. If you're a taxi driver, remain a taxi driver. I mean, I don't know if you use the word architect and taxi driver, but, Arjuna was a warrior. He remained a warrior, but he just changed. He just add
Krishna, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what the whole idea of spreading Krishna consciousness according to time, place, and circumstance means, to take into consideration, the local sensibilities in terms of culture, in terms of dress, in terms of food, and presenting the message of Krishna consciousness in those clothes, quote unquote. And that's justified by that verse, by the Stanistitaha verse, which is monumental, to give a sort of a philosophical or theological justification to the concept.
I think it would be more effective too, because you're kind of just meeting people where they are instead of asking them to kind of meet you where you or us where we are. Like, just add to this to your life,
right?
To improve your life.
If you happen to be a butcher, perhaps we could humbly suggest considering to find another job, right?
Right. But most people can just add Krishna to their life and benefit in some way. They don't have to, full on, become a initiated devotee shaved up in the temple. Of
That's
course,
a great question.
nice.
Also, the issue of initiation, this is really interesting theology. There's some, like, for example, Lord Chaitanya, there's this is a paradox. There's two stories found in Chaitanya Bhagavat and in Chaitanya Charitamrita about his initiation. What did Lord Chaitanya receive when he got initiated? One version says that he received the Krishna mantra, like not the Maha Mantra, like more of a sort of a Gayatri type initiation that we would get sort of in second initiation in ISKCON.
Right.
Implying that he never got the Maha Mantra, which is the name of Krishna, which Kaviraj Goswami says does not depend on initiation. Rupa Goswami says the holy name does not depend on initiation. It's powerful statements. And then another says that he got the Maha Mantra. So it's kind of like forever there'll be this sort of like ambiguity about the initiation, the story. I mean, the authorized hagiographies of that specific event of Mahaprabhu getting initiated.
Oh wow.
But yeah, like living in a temple and then as opposed to like staying at home. And I agree with you completely. And when did you accept Christ? And like, I accepted Christ into my life. Like, maybe I think it's just going to happen. Devotees are eventually going to say, yeah, I accepted Krishna. Or I was born in a Krishna family, but when I was 17, I really accepted Krishna in my life. I went to school the next day, and I wore the same clothes the next day, but I had some sort of experience, and you know what I mean?
Yes. I find those the way you and other devotees have kind of like had that very black and white kind of joining of Krishna consciousness to be more powerful of a conviction than someone who kind of like, okay, grew up with it, but then still like can go back to their old life of just being a kind of like a devotee kid, but not exactly that conviction is not exactly there because it's such a gray area. Anyway, just a side point. But
that's really interesting.
Yeah. And I do feel that people who do grow up in Krishna consciousness, they also have to join in a sort of way. Like they have to choose when, okay, like I'm going to leave my other whatever life or bad habits I may have behind, and I want to be more committed to this process, and have to make that choice the same way someone who converts to convert or accepts the Krishna consciousness. So then you back to your your journey. How long did you distribute books for in LA, and how long did you stay there in LA?
Well, till about 1999, till Bhakti Swami started making that television series on Prabhupada's life.
Right. That's where we met. I think that's when we met.
Oh yeah. Where? In New York?
New Jersey. They filmed a lot in New Jersey. They filmed at my house. They filmed at Swami Krishi Prabhu's house,
Right.
that huge house where everyone was staying. And yeah, that was a great time.
In high school, I was a drama major. So I'd been in every school production since ninth grade. And so all of a sudden I was like, I'm getting tired. Like, excuse me, are you flying in or coming out? Excuse me, are you flying in or are you coming out? Excuse me, are you flying in or you're flying out? Oh, well, we're showing this all. And like, either like, because depending on how many seconds the person gives you, you could go that far into your mantra.
Right.
But most of them like will just give you like half a second. So it's really just like, excuse me, are you flying in or coming out? So doing that like all day for like 5 years, I was just like, and then I guess Krishna made an arrangement. Bhakti Swami needed some actors. I was like, hey, I can act, sort of.
Right.
So I was traded. And I asked Maharaj if I could, and I think by that time I had taken initiation from him. I had gone to Mayapur. My mom had come again, and all this time my dad's kind of like, yeah, whatever. He trusted me the whole time, and he was kind enough to give me some money, which enabled me to, to travel with Bhakti Swami without Maharaj having to pay for me. Right. So I guess that goes to my dad's benefit, and so I was like, I can act, and so I guess behind the curtain, Suvas, the temple president of ISKCON LA, and Bhakti Swami discussed, and so I got, I was allowed to travel. So all of a sudden, I'm from like this super regulated Prabhu to like, going to sleep at like 8:32 instead of 8:30 p.m. was just like
something's wrong. Yeah,
something's wrong. And all of a sudden, I'm like in San Jose, and we're on this film sets, and these no sadhana, and eating bread from the supermarket, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and shooting till 10 p.m. and Bhakti, and it was just like, whoa, a whole different. And then one day I was reading Ravindra Swarup Prabhu's offering to Prabhupada, his Vyasa Puja offering, in which he quotes Prabhupada saying that, while the spiritual master is alive, one should serve him physically. Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, hey, why don't I ask Maharaj if I can do that? And he was like, yeah, sure. So I never went back to LA, and I just continued as his personal assistant for 2 more years.
Amazing. We can do a whole podcast on that. I mean, that
Yeah, from getting
experiences you might have had, realizations you might have had. I mean, I feel the loss of his, Vapu here very much in my
because your
life.
parents were initiated by him, right?
Yes,
So,
yes. And he was so close to us. I mean, it was sad to lose his association. I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but how do you feel? Like how did you process like his loss?
it was very unpleasant, I processed it. It was just kind of like a very I understand now why like the Acharyas never speak about Krishna's disappearance.
Right.
It just occurred to me now, actually, because you don't like that. And also, I guess Krishna's in control, but the sort of unfortunate condition, we could say. I mean, who knows what was going on in his consciousness, but to pass away in a hospital, this COVID and the whole.
Sure.
It was just very. And then we were talking about some issues and personal thing, and he had told me, "Come to the land, let's talk about it personally." And then, so it's kind of like it was left unresolved.
Right. Okay, and we don't have to get into that,
cool.
but let's talk a little bit about your like more recent projects and things that you're working on.
Okay.
So where are you now, and what are you doing?
Nothing. I'm at the Krishna house. Right now I'm in. Brahmatirtha is in charge of the Bhakti-Vedanta Institute, the North American branch of the scientific branch of Krishna consciousness, right?
Right.
And Hridayananda Maharaj bought a house here in Gainesville. So I'm staying at this house right now, which serves as a Bhakti-Vedanta Institute / Krishna West house.
Mm-hmm.
I went back to college, so that took a long, like after years of being with traveling with Bhakti Swami, all this time I felt like I had this sort of a little bit of an intellectual inkling, and I do believe that if devotees have some sort of higher education, it can be used in Krishna service and the mission of Lord Chaitanya. So I went back to UC Santa Barbara. I went to UC Santa Barbara and then got admitted to Oxford, and I went there, but unfortunately my mom passed away, so she never got to see that, which is kind of a bittersweet, no, more bitter than sweet, because I remember she had told me, like, you can do whatever you want with your life, but just, at least get a college degree, because, I'm an immigrant from Croatia and I would only dream of going to college. And so, it was, sometimes things are kind of tragic in the material world, right? I mean, Krishna says so. Yes. It was just bad timing that she passed away before I finally made up my mind that, what, like, no, I want to get a theology degree for Krishna so I can, represent Krishna in a perhaps more sophisticated, learned way, to a more learned audience, if it happens to be in front of me, So I went, I did an Oxford degree. Then I actually started a PhD program, and I was part of that statistics of about like 90% don't finish their PhD. So after a few years, I'll spare you the details, but I stopped the PhD program and kind of fell back on my master's degree from Oxford. And while I was at Oxford, I remember I had this Christian professor, this really nice Anglican priest, the Reverend Andrew Lindsay, who's the head of the Oxford Center for Animal Ethics. He's like one of the spearheading authorities in the Christian world for Christian vegetarianism.
Wow, interesting.
Old Anglican, born and raised in Oxford, PhD from Oxford, Anglican priest, ordained, family man, and scholar, like writer of 20 books. And it's all about how, trying to squeeze an animal-friendly, justification from Bible verses, which is, with all due respect, a difficult job, because there's a lot of verses that don't, are not conducive to that end.
Sure.
But suffice it to say, we met once a week. That's the thing you do. Like, you go see your professor over there once a week. He gives you a list of books you're supposed to read for the week, and then you meet the next week. And so I went to his house every week, and there was, a little fireplace, and he was smoking his pipe and with his, red wine. And he was fascinated about my story. Like, first I presented myself just as a Hindu, a Hindu monk, because the word Hindu actually can, it's a whole discussion, but don't you think the word Hinduism can actually be very, very helpful?
Yeah, right.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, in those circles, it means. I mean, they can relate with that. What that means.
Right. So after I told them that, I had been a monk and I had been, because of that ghost thing, or maybe because of past karma or whatever it is, my parents and because of perhaps my sort of very sort of fanatical upbringing in Krishna consciousness, I don't want to blame, senior devotees too much. A lot of it, I would say 95% has to do with my own whatever mistakes and also the time, there was like this strong anti-cult, anti-sect, again, ethos in the air, especially in Europe, it was kind of fading away in North America. But in the early 90s, mid 90s, Hare Krishna was still seen as a cult, And so my parents, my mother in particular, was very afraid that if, she died, for example, then I would give all the inheritance money that I would get from her to the Krishnas. Right. So now I had to process this afterwards because, I didn't really think when she got cancer, and she remember I was in Calcutta and she called and she was like, I have cancer. And I had to take a decision with her. I wanted to go and see her. She's like, no, keep traveling with Bhakti with your guru. And I remember the last meeting I had with her was in this, because she considered dying in India, actually.
Oh, wow.
She even went to she checked out the Apollo clinic in Delhi. Right. So my last meeting I had with her was in this Oberoi hotel in Delhi, and she was about 2-3 months before she passed away. I remember the last thing she ever told me was, become a very good devotee. Wow. But the backstory is that she felt, hurt that the Krishnas had stolen her son.
Yeah.
If any brahmachari is hearing this, dude, you gotta call your mom and your dad, like
yes.
more than you would if you were not a brahmachari.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's why I kind of resent, those mentors of mine who were kind of trained me up, so to speak. They should have said that to me, like, hey, are you calling your dad? Are you calling your mom? Are you staying in touch with them? When was the last time you visited them? Are they okay with what you're doing? Yeah. Yeah. So like one of her best friends told me later on, she was like, your mom felt like, the Krishnas stole her only son from her and they were not going to steal her money now, So after she passed away, I found out that, $9 million, that's a lot of money. I had received 1 million and she had given 9 to the Los Angeles Opera. That's why the title of my memoir was originally, 9 million to the LA Opera. And back at Oxford, this professor was like, when hearing about me traveling around the world, and he's like, Cyril, you are sitting on a gold mine. You should be glad that your parents disinherited you, because you'll make more money with this book than you would have if you hadn't gotten disinherited. And you should dedicate the book to the LA Opera and, the whole thing. And so he was like, you got to write you have to, how many people would love to know what it's like to be in the mind of a Hare Krishna monk? Oh, it's brilliant. It takes place in England and in America and India and France. And you have to write this book. You have to write this book. So to answer your question, what I've been doing since I've been really trying to hone down the art of memoir writing. And one of my main projects right now, aside from setting up a business selling zeolite powder, which is a mineral powder, I'm setting up a business with 2 friends of mine from Europe. One is American, and we'll see where that goes, because I have to generate funds, because I haven't been generating. I actually haven't generated many funds in my entire life. Right. And so now my little piece of cheese is getting short. So I pray to Krishna that I can start generating funds. But so aside from making whatever endeavors I can to make money, what's close to my heart is writing this memoir called, Monk Until Monday. Actually, your godbrother, Jai Chaitanya. Yeah. Oh, you're so cool to put that up. Yeah, if anyone wants the free copy, no strings attached, you can just go to the link and I'll send you like chapters by chapters. And only if you want to write, a review on Amazon when it comes out, then I'd be very grateful. But thank you for showing it.
I put the link in the comments. Get a free book. Click on the link, get a free book. He's gonna send it. You're gonna send it to them?
Yeah. Like it's not completely done yet. So chapters at a time, over the next 6 months, hopefully, or maybe less.
Fascinating. I mean, like, we're not even done with the interview yet, but like all the stuff you're saying is super fascinating, and it's all in this book. So go get the book. Fill out. There's a form you can fill out.
How do you like that line? If I hadn't become, like that book, like the monk who sold his Ferrari.
Right.
So if I hadn't become a monk, I could have bought a Ferrari.
Yeah, it's catchy.
Catchy.
It's true. Wow, fascinating.
So Jai Chaitanya, you're the disciple of Radhanath Swami, who was living in New York for some time. I think he's from LA.
Yes.
So he had that title, that word. He wanted to do a men's only sort of program for, helping men with controlling their sex desire and just like men stuff.
Yeah.
And he wanted to call it Monk Until Monday. And when he said that, I was like, oh my God, that's such a great name. So just a few months ago, I asked him, hey, do I have your permission? Because he didn't do anything with that. So do I have your permission to use that name? He's like, yeah, go ahead. So, cool. And Medium Karma, a memoir of medium bad karma is, once I was in Vrindavan some years back, maybe some of you who are watching, this, there's this street astrologer who's sitting on the ground behind, the back entrance of Krishna Balaram temple.
Yeah. Yes.
On a square plastic green tarp.
Yeah.
And he's got a green wooden thing that says, Vedic astrologer.
Right.
So I was like, okay, let me get my chart read by him. So he, took my details, and then he met me where I was staying. And like that book by George Orwell, 1984, there's like, a reduced vocabulary, like good plus good, super plus good.
Yes.
So his like way of analyzing different facets of my life, from like relationship to parents, fatherhood, wife, career, money, health, whatever, was very good, medium good, medium bad, and bad.
Wow.
So I thought, okay, medium bad karma, because that's kind of how I see. I can't complain I've had bad karma, but I know, it's all relative. That's like, I try to remind myself, it's all relative. We're not our bodies, we're souls, and everyone's supposed to be suffering in this material world, but I guess the grass is always greener on the other side. And this inheritance of $9 million, and not being personal things about relationships, and not having perhaps been able to enter into a long-term marriage relationship when I wanted to, or setbacks. Certainly have had a lot of setbacks in my life, and so medium bad karma, I think, is a good way to describe my lot, my karmic lot in this life.
Fascinating. That's really cool. I'm really interested in this book. And then tell us before. So whoever's listening, we're gonna do question and answers. So there's a few questions in the comment section. So if you have any more questions, please put them in the comments now, and I'm gonna get to them. But before that, I want to talk to you about. So I've been seeing on your Facebook you're teaching Bhakti-sastri now.
Yeah, this is really cool. Like, I really see this as Krishna's mercy, because I dropped out of a PhD program, and I realized, like Tamal Krishna Maharaj had told me long ago, it's not really your nature. I'm not a scholar type. I'm not the kind of guy to sit behind, in a library and so, but I have, enough academic qualifications, and I guess experience in reading Prabhupada's books and distributing Prabhupada's books.
Yeah.
To teach Bhakti-sastri, and I'm happy with that, And somehow the idea came up of like, well, why don't we, set up a center of examination, get permission from the ISKCON Board of Examination, or whatever it's called, the education ministry.
Accreditation or whatever.
Exactly, to be a center of examination for Krishna West. And I was expecting all sorts of, pushback, because I had tried to become a teacher at the Mayapur Institute, and the head of the Mayapur Institute had said, no, we don't want him to be a teacher because he's part of Krishna West. And so I was expecting, like, now, we're going to be our own, like, authorized, and it went like a knife in butter. Like, it just went like a knife in soft butter, like no objection, like from beginning to end. And now we're just like, Krishna West is an official center of giving, the Bhakti-sastri, and hopefully eventually the Bhakti Vaibhav, and whatever courses Prabhupada taught, the ISKCON disciple course, center of examination. So I asked Garuda, who was on your show, right?
He's coming on actually next month again.
Oh wow, what's he going to talk about this time?
Book changes.
Again?
No. He didn't talk about book changes the first time. We kind of talked about Prabhupada's controversial statements and how to process them and things, but we didn't get into book changes at all. But we're going to talk about that.
Wonderful. Well, he suggested, because we wanted to call it the Krishna West Theological Seminary. And then Ridan and Marge and Garuda were like, well, wait a second, like, come on, you know what a seminary is? And so, Christian seminaries are like hardcore programs, where you have like a lot of different courses and professors. And it's just like, and we're just like basically teaching, ISKCON catechism, which is like Prabhupada's book.
Right.
But it's glorious too, because it's the Bhagavatam. It's
amazing.
It's wonderful. Great. So after further consideration, we're calling it the Krishna West Center for Bhagavad Studies.
Is there a website for that?
Do it?
Is there a website?
No, but there's a YouTube channel where we're planning to, upload. We're going to start on June 6th, Sunday 6th, with a 2-hour mandatory interactive live class. And then the rest is, just questions and reading at home. And it takes about...
Yes. If someone wants to get more information about how to enroll or whatever, where would they go? To that YouTube channel?
No, they would just write to me. easybhakti@gmail.com.
Put that up now. I was going to do it at the end, but
it's a what's it called? Rolling enrollment. So, there's 4 modules in the Bhakti-sastri course: Bhagavad-Gita, Ishopanishad, Bhagavad-Gita, Nectar, Devotion, Nectar of Instruction.
Right.
So after each module, we accept new students, and you just do 4 modules from where you started.
Yeah.
So, but we're starting our first module on June 6th. There's 4 or 5, maybe 6 students right now. And,
wow. I just want to say, I had kind of like a crisis of faith in like 2005 or something. And I thought, I don't know if I want to be a devotee, or I don't know what I want to do really. And so someone suggested me, why don't you Bhakti-sastri? And I thought, why should I do that? They said you can understand what the whole thing is about. It's like the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, really dedicating yourself to understanding the philosophy of Krishna consciousness and reading Prabhupada's books and studying them actually in a really systematic way. It changed my life.
Where'd you do it?
In Vrindavan, 2006.
Oh, you were in Vrindavan?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I stayed in Vrindavan with 2 friends. We did it for 5 months in the summer in Vrindavan. I don't suggest that to anyone because it was really, really austere, but I got so much out of it. And that's when I I convinced myself that this is what I want to do with my life. I want to be a devotee of Krishna because I was convinced by reading Prabhupada's books in a very systematic way. So I suggest anyone who's kind of like not sure or really is interested in Bhakti-sastri, go check out this course that's starting on June 6th with Prabhu here, and write to him.
There's another teacher too. Sorry.
Another teacher as well.
Yeah, there's 2 teachers. Another is Madhavendra Puri, is a senior Bhakti Swami disciple from France who taught, actually, maybe he taught you. He was teaching with Burijan at the VIHE for years.
Right.
And so 2 of us are right now teaching it. And you need, whatever. If you're part of ISKCON and you want your first or second initiation, you have to take Bhakti-sastri anyway. Right. So
yes.
Might as well take it from the official certified Krishna West Center for Bhagavad Studies, which is great because, there was a whole age, is Krishna West really part of ISKCON? Yes or no? So now that Krishna West is a project that's, administering accredited certified ISKCON degrees, it's, as far as I see it, Krishna West is forever cemented into the fabric of ISKCON, I would say.
Very cool. Very cool. So let's get to the questions from the comment section. So here's one. Hare Krishna, such a wonderful, riveting journey. In your journey, have you had personal spiritual setbacks? If yes, in those moments, how did you pick yourself back up? How did you find your like-minded Sangha?
Yeah, I don't want, this is public, so I don't want to maybe give specific details.
Sure.
But there are, the notion of accidental fall down is there in our scriptures.
Yeah.
And so I've certainly had my lot, and hopefully I won't again, but cow dung happens, Wait, can you put up the question again? Because
yeah.
So personal setbacks, and it all had to do, I think, with lack of association. Whenever I found myself, like, for example, went back to UC Santa Barbara, I had a choice between going to Gainesville, like here, community college, and I decided to go to UC Santa Barbara. And then all of a sudden I found myself alone, and on this college campus. and I became considerably weak spiritually, So whenever I had setbacks where lust, really kicked back in really hard, it was maybe because I committed offenses. I mean, that's what our scriptures say also, but I definitely see the difference when I stay in good association, when I stay in the fire of Sankirtan, when I, make it a point to join a kirtan every day if possible, when I make it a point to read the Bhagavatam. Like, I haven't been doing this for a long time, for years. I listen to lectures on a daily basis, right?
Yeah.
And I remember when I was a brahmachari, I used to read the Bhagavatam regularly, like with Prabhupada's purports. So now I don't know if you guys know, but you should check this out. There's this website called the Bhaktivedanta Vedic Library.org. Have you heard of that?
Yes. Let me put it up so we can show you.
The Bhaktivedanta Vedic Library is based out in New Vrindavan, and it's a high-class, totally professional reading with purports of the entire Bhagavatam and other books of Prabhupada. So I have an app called Speed Up. It's called Speed Up Pro on my little iPhone, and so I have the audiobook. And so now I've made it a point every day for 30 minutes and 6 seconds precisely, because that's 3 plus 6 is 9, and that's an auspicious number. Whatever. Right. For 30 minutes, I listen to the Bhagavatam, and like what I do is I'll play it with purports, and I put a bookmark at the beginning of a verse, right? And I'll listen to the verse, and then I'll press the bookmark, listen to the verse again, maybe 2 or 3 times. Then I let it play, listen to the purport of Prabhupada. And when the next verse comes on, I put a bookmark there, but then I click on the previous bookmark and I listen to that last verse one last time. And then I click the next bookmark and that brings me to the next verse. And I let it play 2 or 3 times. And then I let it play fully with the purport. And in this way, right, I just get a really nice absorption in the storyline. And I listen, and if I space out while I'm listening to the purport, I go back 10 seconds and really listen. And that's been revolutionary. So to answer Naimisharanya Prabhu's question, I think the solution is an open secret, good association and good hearing and chanting.
Technical question. Did you say that you have another app that you use to play the things that you can get from the
download the book? You can either stream the book, or you can download it as an MP3 and then transfer it to your Samsung or to your iPod, and then use any type of MP3 playing app that plays MP3s as audiobooks.
And that's the app that you have. What is it called again?
I mean, there's tons on the market, but this one has a bookmark, so I don't know about the other ones. This one's called Speed Up Player Pro. Okay,
cool. That's good to know. And also you can stream it like from your phone as well. That's really neat. Oh, and they have an app as well. It looks like the Bhaktivedanta Vedic Library has an app. Cool. Wow, very nice. Okay. Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. Could you please ask Prabhu a question about his experience of being secretary to His Holiness Bhakti Shri Swami? Any fine memory that he can share? Just one thing. That would be really nice, I guess.
Yeah. I have, a few highlights.
Please.
God, I remember once it was a Vyasa Puja offering for him, and we were celebrating it in South Africa. And I had collected little anecdotes, which I should have, of, things I had experienced with him, funny things, And so I was reading them. I was reading it, and everyone was just cracking up. And, I like when people laugh, because I find my life is kind of sad. So when I can make devotees laugh, it's like, wow. And then Bhakti Charu Swami was laughing, and he was laughing so much at hearing these stories, these memories, that he was like, his stomach, tears were flowing from his eye. He was like, he took off his glasses. He was wiping his eyes because he was laughing so much, and his stomach was hurting.
Wow.
Laughing. One anecdote. Oh, I got so many. And yet, what can I say? A nice anecdote. And when I got chastised once in New Vrindavan, because we were filming Abhay Charan, and he had this car. It was a good car, an expensive car, like an old secondhand Mercedes. And he had to go to London because actually one of his disciples was passing away. So he went to London to see her off, as she was in the hospital. And so during these 2 or 3 days of the shooting, one of the team members, who was a Guru Kuli.
I know the story.
You know the story, right? Tell us.
Oh, he crashed the car.
He's like, hey, he was like such a fast talker. He's like, hey, Chandra, give me the key because, we're going to wash the two or three cars. I'll get them washed at the same time. And I was like, oh, okay. So I gave him the key to the Merc. And that night, he went driving crazy with other friends from New Vrindavan.
Yeah.
In these like crazy roads of West Virginia. And then on their way back, when they're finally driving back, and they were going super fast, on the last stretch back to New Vrindavan, a deer went right in front of them. And so they turn and then they toppled, and then they came this close to the gas container that heats up all of New Vrindavan. In other words, the whole New Vrindavan could have just exploded in flames if the car had come this much closer to the and none of them got hurt.
Those details.
The car was totaled. None of them got hurt. And then, they I guess they called Maharaj. And so when he came back, he didn't say a word to me, nothing, And I was like, gosh, I'm going to get it. I'm going to get the sauce. And then, like this Swami came to talk, and the parents of the kids came, meeting after meeting after meeting, and it was like 10 p.m. And when the last one finally, said, okay, Maharaj, goodbye, and left, he was in one of those cabins. He turned around. The first word he says, actually, this is all your fault, Chandrasekhar.
Wow.
That was funny. Oh, it wasn't really funny. It was hard.
Yeah. Krishna.
Yeah. Now he told me this. You'll appreciate my association. He told me once, and it's true. Like I find myself, for example, like chanting japa and like remembering his example. He was quite strict in chanting his japa. Not that I'm very strict, but at least the idea of waking up early. He never woke up with an alarm. He just woke up naturally without an alarm clock. So yeah, those were, I spent a lot of time with him, and I'm grateful.
Yes. I guess this is from when you were talking about book distribution. What if you asked if they wanted to give a donation because of Gyata Sukriti, right?
Yeah. Look, if you feel like saying these are free, but if you want to give a donation, we accept it. I think that's legit. I personally just don't like to bring in, having done both now for many years, I personally just don't like to bring in the money issue at all. Then I feel I have this total freedom to not think in the back of my head, okay, when is the donation line going to come? There's none. It's just what you see is what you get. Are you interested? It's about Krishna. I'm getting a lot of inspiration from it. It's yours if you want. But yeah, what I don't like is like, you hand the book in the hand of you put the book in the hand of a person, and they're like holding in, and you can see from their body language, like, what's going on? And it's like, oh, so where are you from? And they're asking all these personal questions. So the person feels like polite. So they have to, answer the questions, although they're, want to go wherever they were supposed to do. And then, oh, wow, that's great. Oh, wow, great. Oh, yeah. Okay, well, yeah, you keep it with you. We just asked for a donation.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I don't think it's just going to last long. I don't think it's proper for anyone, even brahmacharis.
Right.
So if you want to say, look, these are free. These are totally free. Of course, we have to have sponsored books to be able to give them out for free. But hey, if the Mormons can do it, and if the Christians can do it, why can't the Vaishnavas do it, or the ISKCON devotees do it?
Yeah.
So it's up to you. Just Agyata Sukriti, but at what cost? That they throw away the book in a garbage can, and Juan comes back and sells it to you for 50 cents a pop. Or like, I met this really amazing, he calls himself a devotee of Krishna, and he gave me a book of ancient wisdom that talks about God, and wow, he gave it to me. I would go with the latter in terms of PR, but hey, no hard and fast rules.
Yeah. There's only one more question here, and then I want to just talk really briefly about your YouTube channel. The Abhay Charan series is amazing. We are so sad we already watched all the episodes. Are there any plans for another Krishna conscious series? By the way, your acting was awesome, Prabhu. Love from Berlin.
Thanks. I don't know if there's another series. No, I don't think so.
I haven't heard anything.
No. That was amazing. That was fun. You know, he once Bhakti Swami told me, he said, "I'm the first sannyasi ever to be a movie maker."
Right.
That was kind of cute.
We would wait, like we would watch it at the temple for Sunday feast when the next one came out. Like it was like the new one came out. Okay, we're all gonna like sit in front of this TV for Sunday feast and watch it. And you know the early ones were like Falgu Baba, and those were so exciting. Do you remember that? Like
Yeah, the production. You know, he didn't have much money, and you know, there's that verse from the Bhagavatam that says, you know, these literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. So you really have to have that mode in
watching it now. Now it would be like a little like, okay, this is a little dated, but at the time I thought it was fantastic as a kid. Here's another question. You've said you don't regret, but in retrospect, do you think devotees should have encouraged you to continue college?
Yes, I think so. In good association. So perhaps if they had said, listen, why don't you just transfer to some college where there's devotees? I think so, because maybe I wouldn't have lost $9 million. Or I've never lost him because I never had him. But
right.
You know, and then like going down in terms of the social ladder, you know, like all of a sudden it's like, oh God, Cyril, you know, the college, the Ivy League college dropout who joined the cult, you know. Whereas what would have been the difficulty in just, you know, sticking it out for 3-4 more years, get the degree, and then join the brahmachari ashram, for example, if I still wanted to, you know. So right. I think that, I would have preferred to be told, hey, look, no, you got a great opportunity. Just make sure you got good association. And even, you know, why don't you open a Bhakti-yoga center at your school, you know? But what does they say? Like hindsight, what is it? Vision is perfect in hindsight or something? 2020
hindsight is 2020. Yeah, hindsight is 2020. What's your YouTube channel called?
Oh, my YouTube channel is called Devotion Yoga. And it just kind of blew up for small scale. It's not like, you know, Janavi with 120,000 followers but I made this one video called Am I a Hindu? And for a couple of weeks, I got like 1,000 subscribers in a matter of 2 weeks. It was kind of amazing. Then it just stopped. But yeah.
Okay, so you're making a lot of different videos, like music and kind of your views on things as well. And
I try to quote the Gita. I try to, you know, stick to Krishna, but some are reaction videos, some are different topics, and
right.
Yeah.
Very cool. Go check out Chandrasekhar Prabhu's YouTube channel as well. I'm going to put it in the comments as well. Okay, well, Chandrasekhar Prabhu, that was really fun. Thank you for joining. And that was really, really nice. And for those who want to get in touch with Chandrasekhar Acharya Prabhu, you can get him on Facebook as Cyril War, as his civilian name, and Chandrasekhar Prabhu. And also he is on by email, as we mentioned earlier, easybhakti@gmail.com. Get in touch with him. Do the Bhakti-sastri course. Get his book. Subscribe to his YouTube channel.
Let me add one last thing.
Sure.
I have to say thanks to Indradyumna Swami, because the whole period of my life after traveling with Bhakti Charu Swami was spending a lot of time on the Polish tour. And that was a huge period of my life, which was amazing. And for me, you know, and that whole ISKCON Russia, Eastern, you know, ex-communist bloc flavor of Krishna consciousness, and doing, you know, getting 10,000 kids to chant Hare Krishna as part of the Village of Peace band when I was the lead singer. So not that I want to, you know, talk about myself. I just want to give a shout out at the risk of sounding really corny to Indradyumna Swami, because that was a really important part of my life is those years that I traveled with him in Poland and Australia, and he gave me a lot of things, and I want to thank him also.
Very cool. My wife's listening from the other room, and she's asking a question here. Any more music in the pipeline? Because our family's a big fan of your summer Hare Krishna video. Yeah,
oh, God,
I love it. We love that kind of style of Mahamantra, like Nam rock kind of thing, like, you know, a cool music video and chanting Hare Krishna. I love that. We like it a lot. So any more music in the pipeline?
Tulsi and I, the devotee who did that, you know, Jai Jagannath song, you see it on that first video on my channel. We were planning to do, or we're talking about making another album, but right now I think I want to finish that book.
Okay.
And
we love the music. Continue the music. Very nice.
You're kind. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Chandrasekhar Prabhu.
Thank you
That was
so
a
much.
really okay, Tulsi, adding another thing. I got to put this up. It's great for dancing in the kitchen and for the kids.
Well, if
Yeah,
I can
go
be
look,
of
go
any
check it out.
service like that, great.
So thank you again, Chandrasekhar Acharya Prabhu. Really awesome to hear from you and to catch up with you and hear your story. Fascinating stuff. And if you want to hear more stuff, go on my YouTube channel, my Facebook page. Chandrasekhar Prabhu, stay on. I'm going to turn live off so we can chat a little bit afterwards. But yeah, that's episode 61 of the Late Morning Program. Take care, everyone, and have a great rest of your day. Haribol.
Krishna, Hare Krishna.